I'm going to be doing some rototilling in one of my caterpillar tunnels in the backyard. And I don't always rototill. It's a thing that I've learned has a time and a place, and today is the time and the place. So for the most part, we don't do deep tillage of the BCS. We just use the tilther. So we do a shallow till, a low till. Some people call it no till, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. But there is a time to till and a time not to till. I've done videos on this before. Click up here if you haven't seen that one. I did one last year about it. Kind of covers more of that stuff. But today I do want to rototill because all of the beds that I'm going to be using here are going to have Salanova lettuce. And that's where I use landscape fabric or weed mat on top. So I'm not worried about bringing up weed pressure, and I'm not worried about putting down weed pressure. These beds were actually covered with low tunnels all winter, so I'm not extending that cycle of weeds in it. And I'm not so worried about the microbiology either, because the soil is damp, which is a nice time to till. When it's dry, you don't want to till. Like, that's the worst time to till. So I did 2 years where I didn't rototill at all, or I just did shallow cultivation with the tilther. And since I've had time away from it, I've seen that there's a time and a place to do it. And this year I'm going to experiment more with rototilling, especially at the beginning. Not all the beds, but many of them, especially the ones that have Salanova transplants, because when you've got your beds tilled, the transplanting in here is so easy because the soil's just soft, right? And so the plugs go in fast. So I'm going to try that. And I know there's going to be some haters out there. Oh my God, Curtis, you can't rototill. Don't you know that you're destroying the soil? And yeah, okay guys, whatever. Like, you don't have to rototill, but I've been doing this long enough now that I've seen everything in moderation is the key here. If you consistently rototill, absolutely you will harm your soil. But a little bit of tillage here and there isn't really a big deal, especially when the soil's like this. I'm not getting rained on, so I'm not worried about losing any of the topsoil to erosion, right? And those are that's the Dust Bowl in the United States, you know, too much rototilling in hot and dry, where you've got weather, wind, rain, hammering away that soil and washing it away. I'm not worried about that here. So time and a place for everything. And what I'm doing specifically today is I'm going to show you guys how I nimbly kind of move around with my rototiller, because it isn't easy to rototill in a greenhouse like this. These are my new caterpillar tunnels that we've been able to stretch out over 5 beds, and it is a bit nebulous on the sides, so it isn't easy. But I'm going to kind of just walk you through it. And I will say, if you're not experienced with running a machine like a BCS, I wouldn't do this as your first experience running a BCS. These machines take practice. They're heavy. There's a lot of balancing to them. So if you're a first timer, this is not the time to run a machine like this. This is something for people who are experienced running these machines, because backing up, moving forward, carefully moving along the edge, like you can see here, I moved the drip aside and have got the drip lines right there. So I have to be very careful to move along here. I've also got these ropes in the way, so I have to be careful of that. I have to move my handlebars around on the BCS, so it's not an easy task. And I'm gonna walk you through it. One question somebody will probably have is, why do you have this bed of rye? Well, I planted a bed of rye there in the fall. I'm just gonna let it grow more before I mow it and till it in. So I'm just working these 4 beds around here for now. Okay, when I'm starting, I'll make at least 2 passes. The first pass is rough, you kind of have to go slow, but then when you come back on the second pass, it'll be a lot easier. And in this case, I actually did 4 passes, 2 up and down each way. When I'm turning the machine around, I stop about 3 feet before the end of the bed, and I make sure to either disengage the PTO, which is the tiller, so that when I move I don't till my feet, or if you're using the reverse function on the BCS, it'll actually disengage the PTO for you. So you'll see that here. So I slow down my throttle first. Actually, I put my handlebars back to straight because they were offset. If I go in reverse, it disengages the PTO. Then I turn around before the end of the bed, and that because I've got that differential wheel lock, it will keep me in a better position.
So moving down to the very edge of the greenhouse, this is where it's the most risky. I have to be super careful about how I move here, and I'm really only moving a few feet at a time. And then when it comes to turn around, it's the same thing. I've disengaged my PTO and backed it right up. I love in these greenhouses how I can just open up the ends. That way I can actually just get my tiller right to the very end, so I can actually utilize all of my bed space here. If I had a end walls built on these, I'd have to start about 2 feet in. So this way I can get all the way to the edge. And as I come back, I'm just being really, really careful. I'm just kind of doing one 4 or 5 foot section at a time and just watching as carefully as I go. So here it is again on the first pass. So this is where I'm just doing bits at a time, and this is where it's the most difficult to till. So I'm just doing it a 5 foot section at a time, stopping, making sure there's no ropes stuck. I've got one there, comes off, and so I'm just doing chunks at a time, and then the second pass it'll be a lot easier.
That's it. So on the ends, I have to back up to get out, right? So I'll just fix those with a pitchfork and the tilther. I'm going to finish all these with the tilther anyways, because I haven't put my compost and fertilizer in yet. So I'll do that and then run the tilther. But I just wanted to break these beds up, warm up the soil faster, soften it up, and so that I can get these plugs in, because they're going to need to go in about a week. So I wanted to get those all prepped. So I hope you guys have found that helpful. Please leave your questions and comments below. If you have questions about any of the gear that I use, some people ask questions that are in the show notes. So you click on the show notes, the stuff below. Sometimes I list some of the common gear that I use in there. It's in there. People ask about the music too. I always list the composer of the music in the show notes as well. So I will see you guys later.